Sometimes the loudest move you can ever make is silence. See, there are moments in life when people expect you to clap back, to defend yourself, to prove your worth with words, but God is teaching you that your greatest defense is in what you don't say. Because silence, when you are anchored in God, is not weakness, it's warfare. It's a refusal to give energy to what was meant to drain you. It's choosing to preserve your peace over winning an argument. And if you've ever been misunderstood, lied on, or underestimated, you know how tempting it is to explain yourself. But what if your explanation is not necessary? What if your silence is the very weapon God has placed in your hands to dismantle pride, to expose hidden motives, and to let Him fight the battle for you? This is not about being passive, it's about being strategic. Because sometimes the enemy thrives on your reaction, but your stillness is what starves their ego. Silence is not weakness, it is strength wrapped in wisdom. So many of us grew up believing that strength was only proven by sound, that to be strong you had to be the loudest in the room, the one who always had the comeback, the one who never let a word against you go unchecked. But here's the truth. True strength isn't always proven in what you say, it's in what you choose not to say. Silence doesn't mean you don't have words, it means you've weighed your words, you've considered the cost of them, and you've decided that your peace is more valuable than your pride. That's wisdom. That's restraint. And restraint requires more discipline than reaction ever will. Think about it. Anybody can react. Anybody can get loud, anybody can defend themselves in the heat of the moment, but it takes a strong, centered, and secure person to sit back, breathe, and say, I don't need to fight this battle with my mouth. That's strength wrapped in wisdom, because wisdom understands that not every attack deserves acknowledgement, not every critic deserves a response, not every insult deserves your energy. Sometimes the greatest proof of your power is your refusal to participate in foolishness. The Bible says in Proverbs 17:28, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. Isn't that powerful? That means even when you don't have the answers, silence has the ability to place you in a posture of wisdom. When you resist the temptation to explain, to justify, or to prove, you allow your actions, your character, and ultimately your God to do the talking for you. And let's be real. Silence is not easy. It's not easy when your name is being dragged. It's not easy when people are twisting your truth. It's not easy when your flesh is screaming. Clap back, show them who you are. But strength is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. And when you silence your flesh to allow your spirit to lead, you are operating in a higher dimension of strength. You are showing the world that your identity is not tied to their opinions, and your destiny is not held hostage by their ego. Here's the thing. When you stay silent, you shift the power dynamic. See, people who are driven by ego thrive off control. They want to control the narrative, control your emotions, and control your response. But when you don't respond, when you refuse to give them the reaction they're fishing for, you strip their ego of fuel. Your silence becomes the loudest declaration that you will not be manipulated. You will not be reduced. You will not be pulled into cycles of pettiness. And that's why silence is strength, because it takes a warrior's mindset to say, I don't need to prove myself here. I don't need to fight this way. I know who I am and I know who my God is. That's not weakness. That's strategy. That's not fear. That's faith. Because your silence is not empty. It is filled with trust that God sees what was done. God hears what was said, and God will handle it in ways that your words never could. Strength wrapped in wisdom is when you decide, I won't let their ego dictate my energy. I won't let their pride determine my peace. I'm going to be still, and I'm going to let my silence speak for me. And in that stillness, God begins to reveal His power, not just to them, but to you. When you choose silence, you're not just holding your tongue, you're handing the microphone to God. You're saying, Lord, I trust that you can do more with my stillness than I could ever do with my speech. And that's a hard place to get to, because we've been taught to fight for ourselves, to prove our innocence, to defend our name. But when you're walking with God, you learn that sometimes the greatest defense is not in what you say, but in what you allow Him to say on your behalf. Think about it. God doesn't need your words to validate you. He doesn't need your explanations to make your truth believable. He is your vindicator. And when you step back, when you remain silent, you create space for his voice to echo louder than your own. Because here's the truth. Your words might clear the air, but God's words will clear the path. Your voice may silence a rumor, but God's voice can silence the accuser. Your statement may fix a moment, but God's hand will secure your future. And if we're honest, sometimes our words get in the way. Sometimes in our eagerness to explain, to justify, to defend, we end up saying more than we should. We give people ammunition to twist. We give them insight into our vulnerabilities, and we give them permission to believe that they've pulled us out of alignment. But silence keeps you aligned with heaven. Silence keeps you covered. Silence keeps you surrendered. The Bible reminds us in Exodus 14:14, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. That verse is not just poetic, it's prophetic. It's God's way of saying, I've got this. Don't fight in the flesh when I've already secured the victory in the spirit. See, your silence is not you backing down. It's you standing firm in faith. It's you declaring God's voice will echo louder than my own. I can't help but think about Jesus when he stood before Pilate. He had every right to speak. He had every reason to defend himself against false accusations, and yet he stood silent. Why? Because his silence was strategic. His silence was a declaration that the cross would speak louder than his words ever could. He knew that resurrection would be his answer. And maybe that's what God is saying to you. Stop trying to resurrect yourself with words when I'm about to resurrect you with power. Your silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of trust. It says, God, I'm not going to fight them on their level because I know you're lifting me to another level. It's the confidence that his timing, his justice, his vindication will speak on your behalf in ways that you could never orchestrate. And let's be real, people may mock your silence. They may call you weak, passive, or scared. But what they don't realize is that your silence is filled with divine strategy. Because while they're talking, you're trusting. While they're plotting, you're praying. While they're trying to elevate themselves with noise, you're allowing God to elevate you with his presence. And when he speaks, he doesn't just silence their ego, he dismantles it. He exposes motives. He uncovers lies. He breaks down the very structures that were designed to trap you. When you hold your peace, you position yourself for God to speak in ways that carry weight, and his words don't return void. His words don't fade away. His words don't need defending. So yes, your silence is powerful, but it's powerful because it makes room for the one whose voice carries eternal authority. Ego is loud. Ego thrives on attention, on validation, on proving a point. And when you encounter someone who is driven by ego, you'll notice something. They're always looking for a reaction because the ego can't survive in silence. It needs fuel. It needs conflict. It needs a stage. And if you don't understand how it works, you'll find yourself feeding it without even realizing it. Every clapback, every defensive explanation, every attempt to prove your worth, it's like throwing wood on a fire. The flame grows stronger, the pride gets bigger. And suddenly you're caught in a cycle of giving energy to someone's ego that was never meant to hold authority over your spirit. But here's the revelation. Silence is starvation for the ego. When you don't respond, when you don't flinch, when you don't give them the reaction they're hungry for, you cut off their supply. Ego is like a parasite. It only lives as long as it has a host. And if you refuse to host their ego by refusing to play their game, it begins to shrink. It begins to lose its grip. It begins to die in the absence of your reaction. Let's break it down. Think about those moments when someone came at you sideways. They said something slick, hoping to pull you out of character. They provoked you because they wanted to feel powerful in your reaction. And the moment you respond, they win. They feed off the proof that they can shift your peace. They can get under your skin. They can pull you into their arena. That's how ego survives, through control. But silence shifts the control back to you. It's the ultimate disruption of ego, because ego expects noise, ego expects confrontation, ego expects a show, and when you refuse to give it what it wants, you frustrate it. You strip it of its illusion of power. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects their emptiness back at them. Proverbs 26:4 tells us, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you yourself will be just like him." That's the word reminding us that responding to ego only drags us down to its level. And isn't that what ego wants? To pull you into pettiness, to make you prove yourself in arenas that don't even matter, to keep you distracted from destiny. When you're silent, you're not ignoring the situation, you're starving it. You're refusing to let their ego feast on your peace. You're saying, "I'm not going to waste my oil on this." Because here's the thing, every reaction costs you something. It costs you time, it costs you energy, it costs you peace of mind. And some of us have been spiritually bankrupt because we've been feeding egos instead of feeding our spirit. But when you step into silence, you're taking that energy back. You're reclaiming your authority. You're reminding yourself, "I don't need to fight this way." And more than that, you're reminding them that you can't be controlled. Because people driven by ego don't just want your words, they want your submission. They want the proof that they can pull you out of position. But when you stay silent, you show them that you are anchored too deeply to be moved by their pride. And let's be clear, silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise enough to know where to invest your strength. It means you understand that battles are not won by ego, they're won by purpose. And if the enemy can keep you feeding egos, he can keep you distracted from destiny. But when you silence yourself, you silence the enemy's access to your energy. Ego thrives on drama, but silence births deliverance. Ego feeds on chaos, but silence ushers in clarity. Ego wants you to perform, but silence reminds you that you are already enough without the performance. And when you starve the ego with silence, you not only dismantle their pride, you protect your peace, you preserve your strength, and you position yourself to walk in purpose. There comes a moment in life when you have to decide what's more valuable, your peace or your point. And if you've lived long enough, you know that trying to prove your point will drain you in ways you didn't even realize. Because proving your point requires convincing, debating, explaining, and justifying. But protecting your peace, that requires only one thing: deciding that your sanity is worth more than their satisfaction. Peace is priceless. You can't buy it, you can't negotiate it, and you certainly can't depend on other people to give it to you. It's a gift from God, and because it's a gift, the enemy will do everything he can to rob you of it. One of his favorite tactics is distraction through conflict. If he can get you wrapped up in proving yourself, you'll miss the blessing of simply being yourself. You'll spend your energy trying to convince people who have already made up their minds about you instead of walking confidently in what God has already declared over you. Here's the truth. You don't owe anyone an explanation for who God created you to be. You don't have to argue about your calling, your anointing, your assignment. If God called you, that settles it. If God appointed you, that seals it. But when you let someone's doubt, someone's criticism, or someone's ego pull you into endless back and forth arguments, you hand over your peace like loose change. And once peace is gone, it's hard to function in clarity. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you." Did you catch that? Peace is tied to trust, which means every time you choose peace over proving your point, you're choosing to trust God's validation over man's opinion. And that's where true strength lives, not in the debate, but in the decision to protect your atmosphere. Think about it. How many sleepless nights have you had because you were replaying an argument in your mind, thinking of what you should have said? How many times have you wasted energy crafting the perfect response only to realize later that it didn't even change their mind? That's the trap. The trap of trying to prove your point is that it never satisfies. Even if you win the argument, you lose your peace, and peace lost is too high a price to pay for ego won. Protecting your peace means sometimes you walk away without closure. It means sometimes you don't defend yourself when you're misunderstood. It means sometimes you let people talk, let them assume, let them believe what they want because you know who you are. And more importantly, you know whose you are. You know that God is your vindicator. You know that time will prove what your words don't need to. You know that silence has a way of revealing truth that arguments can't touch. And let me remind you of this. Peace is power. Peace is not passive, it's not weak, it's powerful because it takes strength to remain calm when everything around you is trying to pull you into chaos. It takes strength to smile when someone is trying to bait you into anger. It takes strength to say nothing when your flesh is burning, to say everything. That's not weakness, that's maturity, that's growth. That's the Holy Spirit guarding your heart. So when you're tempted to prove your point, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Is this worth my energy? Is this worth me stepping out of character, out of alignment, out of focus? Because the truth is, your point may prove something in the moment, but your peace will preserve you for the journey. Protecting your peace is greater than proving your point, because your peace sustains you long after the argument is forgotten. Your peace is what keeps you focused, what keeps you healthy, what keeps you grounded. And if you want to walk in purpose, you can't afford to lose it, chasing after validation that was never yours to earn in the first place. Silence is not just about protecting yourself, it's about revealing others. See, when you stop defending, stop explaining, stop responding, you give people the space to show who they really are without your interference. Because the truth is, your words can cover someone's motives. Your explanations can distract from their intentions. But when you step back and stay silent, their character has no choice but to come to the surface. Have you ever noticed that when you refuse to engage in drama, the drama starts to reveal itself? When you no longer play the game, the players show their true colors. That's the beauty of silence. It becomes a mirror that doesn't reflect you, but reflects them. And often what people reveal in your silence is far more powerful than anything you could have exposed with your words. Think about Jesus at his trial. False witnesses rose up, accusations were hurled, lies were told, and yet he said nothing. His silence exposed the corruption of the system, the envy of the leaders, the fear of the crowd. His refusal to speak didn't hide the truth. It highlighted it. Because silence shines a light on motives that words might otherwise conceal. When you argue, when you defend, when you try to control the narrative, you end up sharing the stage. But when you go quiet, you step off the stage and suddenly the spotlight is only on them. And without your energy to fuel the show, their actions start to look louder, clearer, and uglier. Your silence says, I don't have to prove anything, just keep watching, they'll prove it themselves. The word tells us in Luke 8:17, for there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. That means truth has a way of revealing itself, whether or not you say a word. Silence doesn't stop revelation, it accelerates it. Because while you're staying quiet, God is working in the unseen, arranging moments, aligning situations, pulling back curtains, and letting motives come to light. And let's be real, this isn't always easy. Silence can feel like surrender. It can feel like you're letting people get away with it. But silence is not surrender, it's strategy. It's trusting that exposure is God's job, not yours. It's believing that truth defends itself far better than your arguments ever could. And over time, silence will reveal who was genuine and who was pretending, who was for you and who was against you, who carried love and who carried ego. Sometimes God will even use your silence to test hearts. When you stop speaking, the people who were only around you for your energy, your validation, or your reaction, they'll start to fade. The ones who stay, the ones who lean in, the ones who remain loyal even without your words, those are the ones who are real. Silence has a way of separating the crowd from the covenant. And here's the beautiful part. Silence not only exposes others, it protects you from becoming like them. Because let's be honest, when you're pulled into pettiness, it's easy to lose sight of yourself. But when you stay silent, you keep your integrity intact. You refuse to mirror their behavior. You refuse to become what hurt you. And in that space, God not only reveals who they are, He reminds you of who you are. So the next time you're tempted to argue, to clap back, to explain yourself, remember this: silence has a voice all its own, and it speaks volumes not about you, but about them. Your silence doesn't hide truth, it reveals it. Your silence doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. And in time, their own actions will testify louder than your words ever could. Silence is not just about restraint, it's about positioning. When you choose silence in the face of conflict, misunderstanding, or provocation, you're not just withholding words, you're placing yourself in a posture where God can elevate you. Because divine elevation doesn't happen in noise, it happens in stillness. It happens in the secret place where you've decided, I will not fight this battle in my flesh. I will trust God to lift me in His timing. Elevation requires discipline. And silence is one of the greatest disciplines you can ever develop, because silence means you're not rushing to defend your reputation. Silence means you're not begging people to recognize your worth. Silence means you're not scrambling to fix narratives or fight battles that don't belong to you. Silence is you saying, I believe that if God has truly called me, if God has truly anointed me, then no one can bury me with their words. And that kind of trust creates the perfect atmosphere for elevation. Look at Joseph. He was thrown into a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused in Potiphar's house, and left in prison. And in all of that, we don't see him trying to argue his way out. He didn't waste time screaming, I'm innocent, I'm chosen, I'm called. No. He stayed silent, he stayed faithful, and he let God do the talking. And when the time was right, God elevated him from the prison to the palace in one move. His silence created room for his character, his gift, and ultimately his God to speak for him. That's what silence does. It preserves your energy for where God is taking you. See, you can't waste time fighting in the pit when you're called to the palace. You can't waste energy defending yourself in a prison when God is preparing you for a throne. Silence says, I know where I'm going, so I don't have to waste words where I am. And when you carry that mindset, you position yourself for promotion. Psalm 46:10 reminds us, be still and know that I am God. Notice that it doesn't say be loud and prove your point. It doesn't say defend yourself and fix the narrative. It says be still, because stillness is faith. Stillness is faith. Stillness is trust. Stillness is the soil where elevation begins to grow. And let me say this, sometimes your silence will confuse people. They'll think you've given up. They'll think you're weak. They'll think you're finished. But what they don't know is that your silence is your strategy, because while they're talking, you're trusting. While they're plotting, you're praying. While they're trying to keep you down, God is setting the stage to lift you higher than they ever imagined. Elevation is not man-made, it's God-ordained. And God does not elevate noisy hearts that are consumed with proving themselves. He elevates surrendered hearts that are willing to be silent and let Him do the proving. Your silence says, God, I don't need to make this happen in my strength. I'm trusting you to make it happen in yours. And when you trust Him, He will elevate you in such a way that your silence becomes your testimony. Because when God lifts you, there won't be a need to explain how you got there. People will look and say, wait a minute, wasn't that the one they tried to destroy? Wasn't that the one they lied on? Wasn't that the one they overlooked? And your silence will speak. It will testify that it wasn't your defense, it wasn't your argument, it wasn't your words, it was God. So don't despise the season of silence. Don't resent the moments when you can't explain yourself. Don't be frustrated when God says, hold your peace. Because every time you bite your tongue, every time you stay still, every time you choose quiet over chaos, you are positioning yourself for divine elevation. And when God is ready to lift you, no ego, no lie, no accusation, and no weapon will be able to stop what He has ordained.